Giro for Umbra Games here, bringing you a review on the Order 1886 for PlayStation 4, developed by SCE Santa Monica Studio and Ready at Dawn, published by Sony Computer Entertainment. The Order 1886 was first revealed to the world during Sony's first PS4 press conference. It showed ridiculously beautiful graphics, some creepy atmospheres, and masterfully created character models. It seemed a game to keep an eye out for. When it released to pretty mediocre reviews earlier this year, I waited to pick up a copy at GameStop for around $20. Unfortunately, I still have some cognitive dissonance even at that price. I gave Rise Son of Rome a hard time for being a graphical show-off Xbox One exclusive, but The Order clearly loses a fight between the two. From the story, what I gathered is King Arthur and his knights at the Round Table found the Holy Grail and have been using it with a combination of their blood to become immortal for years. Now, please correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't the Round Table symbolic of no one being in charge and all being equal? Here we have a pretty rude chancellor and a knight commander. Oh well. The Order attempts to establish some semblance of, order through the ages, appearing to be the chivalrous good guys. Their motivations and rebellion squashing takes me back to the Count of Monte Cristo's quote, "Treason is a matter of dates," but I digress. Thus we pick up in some unexplained steampunk version of England near the year, you guessed it, 1886. You take control of the knight, Sir Galahad, which for some reason unbeknownst to me everyone refers to him as Grey or Grayson. And when I say control Sir Galahad, I use the term fairly loosely. There are 15 chapters in the game, and I'm going to guess 3 of them were comprised exclusively of cutscenes. That's not to say the rest of the chapters aren't filled with cutscenes, but there are a few sets of shooting segments in where you actually do take control of your character. The Order relies heavily on QuickTime events, or QTE, to go through most of its mid-chapter cinematics. Everyone should now be familiar with this mechanic, where the game asks you to push a button to make it feel like you're doing something cool during a cutscene. I'm guessing because so much time was spent with exposition and conversation that they realized they couldn't let the player just sit there the whole time without pushing random buttons to keep them awake. And honestly, to get right down to the point, the core of the Order 1886 is a super guided interactive experience and not so much a game. It's a little bit above a full QTE movie, but way beyond something with solid gameplay. Honestly, sometimes they even have problems getting the QTE right as they pop you up with a bunch of text explaining what a button is supposed to do on one side of the screen, while that button's appearing on the opposite side of the screen, giving you 1 or 2 seconds to hit it. When not in cutscenes, the Order is a pretty broken third-person, cover-based corridor shooter, when it actually lets you take cover. Sometimes some obstacles inexplicably can't be used for cover by pressing the circle button. Sometimes it's super sticky and doesn't let you off, especially in the stealth sections, but we'll touch on that in a bit. Instead of unsticking you from cover when you press circle again, if there's another piece of cover around, hitting that button will make you go there. Sometimes you can't shoot through where you're supposed to. Sometimes the cover isn't solid, as in sometimes enemies can shoot through their own cover. Sometimes you take hits when you're behind cover. Sometimes you can't melee with the triangle button, even after you were taught to melee with the triangle button. You can roll when you're within a few feet of a grenade, but never any other time using X. Now keep in mind this only works when you are super close to a grenade, not just close. So all of these problems are just when dealing with human enemies. While all promotional info and trailers up to this point led me to believe we'd be spending our time dealing with a monster epidemic, most of the game is spent in a war between 2 factions. I think there were 3 occurrences where Galahad encounters werewolves, or lycans, as the Order calls them. It probably worked out for the best though, because lycan shooting is pretty stupid. These guys literally run at you in a circular pattern. You have to press X when they get close. Now, not as they steadily approach you, but as they saunter and then jerk quickly through time and space to close the gap, where you dodge and then turn around and shoot them as fast as possible. This is the method you employ in all 3 of the game's lycan encounters. Also, I know they weren't the first to do it, but the devs must be a fan of the Kate Beckinsale Underworld movies, not just in calling them lycans, but in the way they transform. I don't even want to spend too much time going into the game's 2 Elder Lycan encounters in a half QTE, half Street Brawl event. Reminded me of playing Urban Champion on NES, and despite what any of you nostalgic people might try to argue, that game sucks. I challenge anyone to bring on an argument defending that game. Next comes the Order stealth sections. One chapter in particular has a very lengthy stealth area. If it's any indication of how solid the stealth mechanics are, in the opening QTE of this area, your first kill in the scene, graphically Galahad is literally sticking out over the cover. Now what's the worst thing you could do to a game that has a stealth section? How about not only timing your approach to the enemy, but also making a time button press be required? Yes, you heard me. Sometimes cover isn't solid here either to hide you from their eyes. Remember my press circle to go into a cover rant? Well, it changes in stealth scenes, and automatically makes you stick to cover when you press forward and you're anywhere near a wall. Sometimes not even in the direction you're pushing the stick. So it's great that they give us a tutorial for every simple thing, like press triangle when the triangle button's on the screen. Through the entire game, they tell you to press X to navigate across gaps, and all of a sudden it'll randomly no longer be X, but triangle. Then you'll have sections where it's hard to figure out where exactly to press the X button to climb or activate something.
I'm fine.
But damn, look at that water running down the roof. Clicking the left stick is supposed to let you run more quickly, or stagger more quickly, but that's also up to the random determination of the game as well. Sometimes it will let you run when you press the button, other times you'll be auto-running, sometimes it won't let you run, yeah. I only bring this up to talk about how this game really feels inconsistent from set piece to set piece. Not gameplay built from the ground up and story added on, but each scene custom built, making the game feel really disjointed in places. Back to combat for a minute. The weapons are pretty standard fare with rifles and pistols, and a couple of unique exceptions found in the arc gun, and most impressively, the one time you get to use the thermite gun. The thermite gun lets you shoot a cloud of thermite and then follow it up with a flare to set enemies on fire. As I've mentioned before, the game is beautiful, but if that's your sole boast, keep in mind that even beautiful graphics are wasted when you screw up the interaction, like floating papers, texture pop-ins, and radioactive flatware? Constantly rubbing our face in how good your 3D models and props are doesn't enhance our experience at all. Sometimes it seems like the game is waiting for you to do something with the model, and sometimes it's the way forward. But you just have to stand there holding it, rotating it with the left stick. Also have the same problem in advancing through to another area. Like in this example, she asked me to follow her to an elevator. I have to wait until the cutscene starts, but I'm trying to cram myself in there.
We should clear the second floor.
I will also definitely give the game props for its voice acting. The entire cast was extremely solid. All the grunts and moans of wounds and physical exertion are perfectly recorded and all felt natural.
Everything to your liking thus far?
So I was expecting a beautiful disaster out of the Order 1886, so my expectations weren't too far off.
Indeed.
It was beautiful, but unfortunately also more disastery than expected. I wanted more horror and less generic cover shooter, and I especially didn't expect stealth sections. I knew the reviews, but I did have to test for myself because, well, that's how I roll. However, the mainstream critics weren't far off in their assessments of this game. Keep in mind, 50 out of 100 is my score for an average game, and based on my specific genre criteria. The Order 1886 ended up with a 36 out of 100. I can now definitely say for myself that I would advise people to avoid this game. Well, that about wraps it up. Thanks for watching. This is Jiro for Umbra Games. We'll catch you next time.